let's talk about finance. Now, financial mathematics, which talks of money. Money is important. Now, we are going to look at different forms of growth. Basically, it's going to start with the simplest one, which is simple interest, but very useful because it's useful for hire purchase agreements. When you buy something from the shops, how do they determine how much you must pay per month in order to cover the money of the original cost, as well as the interest that they will charge on you because you took it on credit and paid it over a long period of time. Now, simple interest in its nature will be simple. After that, we will look at the more common one, which is compound interest, because when you borrow money from the banks or when you invest your money in the bank, you will definitely want compound interest. It provides a much higher growth because the interest is charged on the money that you gave, as well as on the interest that has already been put on the money. So it provides a much more exponential growth rather than the straight line growth given by simple interest. Let's look into it. Now, simple interest is going to be charged as a percentage of the original investment, or what we call the principal amount. This is going to be applied to each and every year. So the amount that they earn is going to remain the same each and every year. So let's look at an example for that. Let's say that 5,000 Rand is invested at 10% per annum, simple interest. So there will be a mention for every type of question. What type of interest are we talking about? For 5 years. So we want to know how the growth of this will be. So 5,000 Rand is invested, simple interest for 5 years. So the idea is as follows. Because every year they're going to be adding the same amount of money, we just need to find out what is the amount of interest that will be added. And that will be 10% of the 5,000, which is the principal value. So the balance after 5 years, this balance going forward, we will refer to it as the accumulated value. So we'll give it a symbol of A. That will be 5,000, which is the money that was originally invested, that's our P, then plus 500 times 5 years. So we know that each year they're going to be giving us 500 Rand. And remember where we got the 500 Rand from? This was the 5,000 multiplied by 10%, so that we find out what the interest is. So this will be the interest that is given to the account. Now let's look at what the final answer would be. That would be 5,000 Rand. And for 5 years, the 500s together would then be giving us 2,500. So the total for that would be 7,500. And that's how simple interest works. So simple interest is the same amount is calculated as a percentage of the principal amount. And that amount gets added each and every year onto the account so that we can get a final balance of the account. We will use this for hire purchase agreements. We will use it for exactly these type of questions and more that can come up with simple interest. Now we will look at the application, or one of the applications of simple interest, which is the hire purchase agreements. So just remember, when they say hire purchase agreements, sometimes they do not tell you that it's simple interest, but you need to know this, that hire purchase equates to simple interest in your calculations. Now let's look at the example. A laptop is bought for 8,000 Rand on hire purchase agreement of 20% per annum, interest over a period of 2 years. Now, if 1,000 Rand is paid as a deposit, calculate, number one, the credit balance after the deposit. So this one I'm doing it to show you how deposit affects the credit. Now, if a person pays a deposit, it means that they brought the cash with them to buy the laptop on the same day. Now, that means that when they take out credit, they're not going to pay the credit or to take out credit of 8,000 Rand. Rather, the balance would be the 8,000 Rand minus the deposit that has been paid. Sometimes you need to calculate it yourself as a percentage of the cost price, but the idea would be this one, that you minus the deposit from the original amount. This means that the person would be owing 7,000 Rand on credit. So the agreement for the hire purchase part would be for 7,000 Rand rather than the 8,000 Rand. So please pay attention to that one. Now, The next phase says we need to calculate the monthly installments payable over the period of 2 years. So for the 2 years, how much would a person be paying in order to cover this particular agreement, or the 7,000 plus interest that will be charged? The idea of this question is that we need to first find out how much is payable in total, which means that how much is the money plus the interest that will be charged on the money over the 2 years. So now we will take it as such. The balance would be the 7,000 Rand plus, we need to find 10% of 20% of 700 Rand, which would give us 1,400. So that would give us plus 1,400 multiplied by 2 for the 2 years. So remember, you can do the interest calculation on the side and then put it here, but we will later get a formula for this. Then we would have that this would be 2,800. So we would know that the final amount payable would be 9,800 under this agreement. Now that means that we can now finally calculate how much will be payable monthly. Then we would take, let's just get space here, we would be able to take the 9,800 and then we would divide it by 2 times 12, because for every year there are 12 months, so that would be the monthly repayments. So every year there are 12 months. So what we do, we take the number of years and multiply by 12. The answer we get from there, we divide the 9,800 by 8, and then we can final amount of 816,067 cents. So that would be the monthly amount payable for this particular agreement. Then we can go ahead and find out more, that the interest charge would be, we already got it, 9,800 minus the original amount, which is 7,000. So we had it here as 2,800. So there's a lot of questions that we can actually answer from this type of example that we've already done. Now we will go on to the formula that we actually use for simple interest calculation. Okay, now we are going to do a view of the formula that is used for simple interest. Now, I always prefer that when you've done an example with the manual way of calculating, use the formula for the very same example just to see that it gives you the exact same answer that you would get. But let's look at the formula and the symbols that are involved in it. So the formula says that A equals to P, open bracket, which is a multiplication here, please remember, 1 plus I times N. Now, A is the accumulated balance, as we mentioned before. P is the original invested amount, which you call the principal amount invested. Then, or if in the case of credit and hire purchase, is the amount that is taken on credit, the principal amount or credit amount. The I is the interest rate, which means that it's the percentage that is being charged. So if it's 10%, you put 10%. You can also put it as 10 divided by 100 or 0.1, depending on what you are comfortable with in terms of working with this formula. Then here will be the number of years. So simple interest, we will be calculating over years. So the number of years will be here, except for the cases where it's less than a year. So we would have a number less than a year. We'll talk about that in the examples. That will be there. Now, the previous example we did was for 5,000 Rand invested at an interest rate of 10% per annum for 5 years. So for getting this one, we can have it as follows. 5,000, 1 plus 10 over 100, and then we have times 5. Then that one plugged into the calculator, especially if you have the scientific calculator, you would get it exactly as 7,500. So the important thing is writing the formula, substituting the information into the formula, and then getting the final answer for the entire amount plus interest. That will be the balance after 5 years. So that's the simple interest formula.